What's up, guys? Welcome to Roaring Podcast, where we interview experts in tech and product management, providing insights and tips on how to digitize and automate your business processes. My name is Jesper Kask, and I'm your host. In this episode, we welcome Björn Simonsson to discuss design leadership and cross-functional teams. Currently working at SeventyOne Consulting, Björn has vast experience from companies like iZettle, Creona and Voi, working with design leadership and operations, as well as product development. Let's dive right in. Okay, so welcome Björn Simonsson. It's great to have you on our show.
Thank you. Happy to be here.
Yeah, really excited about this one. Just to get us started, tell us a bit about yourself and what you love the most about product development.
So my background is in UX. I studied UX at university, and I've been working in UX most of the time since then, which is like 15 years now in the industry. I've sort of cheated with being a product manager as well for a few years. Mostly because I was I was at an agency. I was a little bit fed up with being too late in the decision-making process. So I wanted to if I'm a PM, I can make the good decisions, so we can build good stuff. And I think that's basically what product development is about. Is building things that makes the world better. In essence, and of course that can be big things or small things. But yeah, I think that's the core of it for me. And my UX background is helping me do that maybe to a bigger degree, since I enjoy the meeting people and understanding their problems. I think that's the essence of making the world better, that you know what the problems are.
And having worked at successful companies like iZettle and now as a consultant at Voi, have you been able to identify sort of common denominators in terms of product design and things like that are making these companies successful?
I think I have a few different trends that are like you said, the common denominator. I think first of all, it's good people. Without that, it's there's no way you're gonna be successful. And it doesn't necessarily mean people who have the fancy degree or a super long CV or anything like that. It's more about being passionate and being open to trying things, and just having an open mindset in general. And then I think, so that's on the individual level. And then I think as a company, there has to be a willingness to change things. Jakob de Geer once said on one of our Christmas parties, the founder of iZettle, that the only constant thing here is change. And that really stuck with me. And I think it's really something that I believe to be true. And that I've seen in these companies, that this doesn't work, we change, we learn from other companies, which brings me to the next thing, which is curiosity. To be curious, or how could we do things better? What are they doing over there that we can learn from? So I think that's one thing, and then also I think one key thing is cross-functionality. To have tech and product and design, and depending on the business, you need to maybe have legal or finance if that's a big thing in the industry that you're in. But having those work together as closely as possible, and create that sort of a good tension between what's feasible, what's viable, and just having those people come together, the creators really.
And it's interesting that you mentioned that, because cross-functionality and cross-functional teams and optimizing them are sort of one of your bigger passions, I assume. And
definitely.
And what is key when setting up a cross-functional team?
I guess it depends on a little bit where you are coming from. If this is if you come from maybe a project type workplace or something else, then I think it's very key to be transparent around why you want to move into this way of working and be cross-functional, what you hope to achieve by doing that. And then it's about setting expectations on that squad or the squads, maybe if you do a bigger change. to create sort of a clear ownership of your part of the UX, having ownership of the technical systems that are in the background. And then of course you need like OKRs or KPIs to let the sort of squad know what they will be measured against and what sort of the business. I mean, in most cases it is a business, and you have to be realistic about how to make money. So having that as a base as well, so everyone understands what we're trying to do. And then I think it's also important not to sort of do the swoop and poop from a manager perspective and just like, this is what we're going to do, this is what your team is, and then leave them to it, but actually iterate, explain the situation and listen to the people in the team or that will be in the team, and listen to their ideas and their suggestions and sort of shape and not be afraid to sort of go backwards on maybe your own ideas of how things should be, because usually the team knows best.
And in practice, when assuming that you start a new role at a company and you get this assignment that requires you to set up this sort of cross-functional team, is there a framework that you use, or how do you go about doing that?
I haven't used any sort of real like existing frameworks. It's more been sort of a try as we go approach. Of course, I like Inspired and Empowered and like Sense and Respond and those books, and that's a huge inspiration to me. But I mean, they leave it quite superficial in exactly how you do it. It's more of the principles that you follow, and then I think each situation is unique in that sense.
And what are the biggest challenges when doing this?
The biggest challenges I think is it's not so much, in my opinion, in the team. It's more about like we talked about how to set it up. I think that's super important, and that managers are sort of allow the team to do their thing. So it's a lot about how you manage the team and let them sort of be innovative in a way on their own, and sort of tell them what you want from them, what the outcomes that you expect, and let them run with that. But then also I think it's like sometimes you fail on the easy things like such as role descriptions, where you like, if this is a new thing and it's not really established, maybe people come in with different incentives into the team. At Settle, we had a bit of a problem early on when we switched from sort of project-based work to cross-functional teams, where a lot of PMs came in and was like, yeah, but I'm in charge of this team because that's what the product leaders thought. And we hadn't aligned across design and tech and product leadership around how we wanted this to work. We thought we had, but we forgot the details. So the teams, and then in the teams we had like, but they don't get along, right? What's happening? And it turns out, yeah, they had different incentives on their role in the team. So you need to do sort of the background job or the preparation work to make sure that the people that join these kind of cross-functional squads have aligned role descriptions and expectations on what this work will do and each person's part in that.
And how much is it a cultural thing? Because you mentioned sort of the open mindset and giving the team the freedom. I guess a lot of companies struggle with sort of, it's easy in theory to I assume to put that out there, like, yeah, we're going to have cross-functional teams, it's going to work perfectly fine, we're going to allow freedom to this team, we're going to make sure they have the tools and resources, and then you sort of struggle trying to implement that in a good way. Is culture sort of the big part in this as well, or?
Yeah, I mean, to me, it's a lot about leadership, and what the culture is in the leadership levels. I once went to a leadership course, and the teacher that said, if it's a problem somewhere, it's 90% of the time it's the leader's fault. And this was to a group of up and coming leaders. So it's a big responsibility, and I think if you go from a project-based way of working, it's or a structure, there are probably people who will lose some influence, or at least they had the feeling of a loss of influence, and they will probably try to defend that. Maybe not like consciously, but subconsciously, like you want to have your I'm not going to say privilege, because maybe they worked hard for that, but like you have some kind of influence in the organization, and seeing this change, you might be afraid to lose that. So again, I think a lot of it comes into preparation, preparing like the leadership area, and how you plan work is I think maybe underrated. And you think like, yeah, but it's the teams that's where it will happen, and it will, but many of the problems will be in the leadership levels, because they're not prepared to change their way of working, or let go of their influence in a way.
And in the cases where you've found yourself in sort of as a leader or part of this team, as in a cross-functional team, um, where everything works smoothly and everyone is happy, what does that enable in terms of product development in a company?
I think much more efficiency in a way, into and ideally also like innovation, because these teams will, given the right circumstances, and not always, of course, sometimes they will fail quite spectacular, which is part of the equation. But if they're successful, the innovation, like the height of innovation, can be very high, because they iterate quickly, and they, like, designers and techies sit together. It's like, yeah, we want, the users want this, and then they go, yeah, but I've seen this new framework, or we can use machine learning here, or like we can solve that big problem that we thought was a big thing, and then we can focus on the next step. So you can have these like leaps of innovation that really change things up. So I think that when it's working well, that's what you see, like solving very hard problems in unexpected ways.
And silos and waterfalls in these sort of teams are probably more common than people might think. Can you avoid it? And if so, how?
I definitely think I've seen so many teams working like in harmony, really, and being a unit. But there are a few things that I think you need to be mindful of to get there. And I think the one is to have the right incentives. Coming back to this, like not having one person thinking that one person is in charge or anything. So having that sort of the whole background set up, so that we don't have sort of company conflicts, what do you say, like inherited into the teams, because then the clash will happen there, and they will be at a standstill basically. So that's one thing. And then I think it's like the classical team building, going through like the forming and storming, norming, hopefully performing phase, to get and give them the time, if this is a newly function or established squad, to give them the time to actually go through this, and not having expectations like from day one they're going to be the most innovative team ever. So they need to get to know each other. And I think here maybe an agile coach, at least access to an agile coach, is could be a great thing to help the team get to know each other and just facilitate these sessions that are needed. And then of course, like a clear rationale why they exist, and giving them some realistic outcomes to work towards. So they have that ownership and sense of sense of ownership of the technical system, sense of ownership over part of the UX, or maybe if it's a small company, the whole UX. So they feel that they own that, and can work towards improving it.
Do you have any sort of success or failure stories from working in these kind of teams?
I think we both, of course. We was, like I mentioned, we went from at Settle, we went from a product-based ways of working to a more, and we tried to set up 4 different squads that would have some ownership. And the first attempt was a huge fail. We thought we had a good idea. We didn't iterate, but we sort of had this idea. Let's do this, and we presented it to everyone involved, and they were like, "What? What do you do? This we don't understand, and we haven't been involved." So there was a lot of resistance. So we decided to take a step back, and then just rethought it. And when we created 3 different options on how we could do it, and then we presented that to the team. And they, or the whole, like all the people that were supposed to make up these 4 teams. And then they had lots of input, and we had to sort of figure out the technical systems, who would own what, and there were lots of pros and cons. And in the end, we actually also did a self-selection. Once we sort of decided, like, this is the team structure we'll have, this team will do this team will do this. And then people selected themselves into these teams. Of course, we had different slots. We didn't have all the backenders in one team. So we had like 3 slots for backenders here, 2 designers in this team, and then people self-selected. And that was a huge success. I think that was a big turnaround to get people engaged, because they went from this kind of resistance into like, right, I can understand why we chose this like way of doing it, because I was part of the discussion, and now I can select into the part of it that I'm most engaged with. And then that worked brilliantly for years until we sort of outgrew that way of working. A few years later, we decided to start a new sort of business unit which was called iSettle Advance. And the idea was to lend money to the customers that we had based on what we knew about their income through our card terminals. So that was sort of a way to give them easy access to capital where banks probably wouldn't be interested, because it was maybe like you need 20,000 to buy a new fridge because the fridge in your cafe just broke down on a Friday, and you need money like that. So those kind of small amounts from a banking perspective that they're not interested in lending, we could do that in an automated way. So we set up, that was the idea. And then we set up a cross-functional team with developers, designers, lots of finance people, of course, risk people, because there was a credit risk involved, legal, product. And they like, this is what we need. We need to prove this product as soon as possible and get some customers on a platform. And they took off. And we helped them sort of with expectation management and having an agile coach and all that. And they took off, and it was a huge success. Of course, it wasn't like smooth sailing all the way, but I would say overall it was very quick from idea to our first customers on that platform.
So how do you ensure a team has the freedom to create innovative solutions?
For me, I think it's a lot of what we already talked about, of course. But first of all, I would like to say it's about like tech debt and UX rot are 2 big things here. If you want to be innovative, you have to have like a baseline of working stuff, so you don't drown in your own debt. And that's classic tech debt stuff. And there's the same for UX basically, although maybe not so many are familiar with that. It's usually called UX rot, where you just add stuff to the menus until no one understands where to go at all. So that's one thing to keep the team successful long term, which sort of breeds innovation. And then I think I've talked a little bit about that as well, the rationale. But I think in this case, to be innovative, you have to give the team a really, really good backdrop on what they're doing or why they're doing it. And that could be like trends in the market, help them see that. That could be what the competition is doing, to sort of give them some like competition, and then they can build on top of that, of course, with their own research, but give them something. Like strengths and weaknesses of our own organization that can help the team decide what to do and how to overcome those weaknesses perhaps. And then of course customer needs and expectations from them, and try to package all that into like a nice narrative that the team can really get engaged around. I think that's really key to get them going. And of course psychological safety. Maybe I should have said that first, because it's such a huge thing. But they need to feel that they can fail, and that's fine, as long as they learn from it, and they don't pretend everything's going well until the day before release. That's not a good failure. But if a good leader, you have different bets, then you expect some teams to fail, especially if they have like bigger bets that are moonshots basically. So I think those 3 things, having like a solid platform that they can build upon, knowing why they're doing things, and have that background, and then the psychological safety to dare to be creative, I think are 3 big things that are key to have successful teams.
Yeah, we had Noelia Almanza in a previous episode talking about innovation and how innovation, the mindset to innovation, or the how innovation is viewed in companies needs to be needs to shift towards more of a failure is learnings sort of view. And you mentioned sort of bad failures and good failures. Could you elaborate on that?
Like bad failures are not, like the late stuff, like I mentioned, the day before release. That's a bad failure. And doing the same thing, failing again in the same way that you did before is also a bad fail. A good fail is trying something very innovative, trying to make it work. It's based on good insights, but then maybe eventually you realize it's maybe it's too hard to package up in a way that is useful or usable. Useful again is a worse way of doing it. Usability can always be a problem. It just becomes too complex, even if there's a need. People aren't prepared to go through this to get the benefits. So that can be but it's really hard to know before you start if something can be packaged well or not.
And if we were to leave the listeners with sort of a final summary or thought on your end in terms of how to build a cross-functional team and how to set it up, but also how to lead and manage it, what would you leave them with?
I would leave them with this, that you need to get out of their hair. You need to give them the best possible opportunities to do this, but then get out of the way and don't let your own ego stand in the way of them making decisions. So if you were in a position to make decisions, be prepared to give them up. Give them the psychological safety, support them in as many ways as you can, and make sure that they come into the team prepared to collaborate. So they have those incentives to get to know each other and to collaborate.
That's awesome. Anything else you want to leave? Any closing thoughts?
It's fun. That's to me at least. I've had so much fun in these teams and leading these kind of teams. It creates a very specific buzz when you have these teams and they are on a roll. It's amazing to see and to be part of. So enjoy the journey if you start it.
Awesome. That's great. Thank you so much, Björn, for joining us. It was really great having you on, and I hope to see you soon again.
Thank you. It was my pleasure.
You've been listening to an episode of a Roaring podcast by Roaring.io. Feel free to share it with your friend, colleague, or peer if you liked it. If you wish to stay connected to us, don't forget to subscribe to the show. Thanks for tuning in. Until next time.